Hello and welcome to BSB Must Reads. This is our October edition, and I have with me the lovely Leigh Hays. How are you, Leigh?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We are enjoying some sunshine here in upstate New York, which is a bit new and different.
Not so much in my part of upstate New York.
No, did you get rain today? It's been raining like crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, I don't have to mow the lawn one last time.
Oh boy. Oh, the trials and tribulations of the weather. But we are here to talk about your new release, Foolproof, which I'm super excited about. I think it has one of the hottest covers BSB has ever done. So please go check out the cover. It's worth it. But I would love to hear more about it, to learn more about you in case readers haven't met you yet. And I would love to hear you read.
As Sandy said, my name is Leigh Hays, and I wear many hats. I'm a desktop engineer, a wife, a mother, an author. But mostly I like to play make-believe. So from my hobbies behind me, or actually on the other side, the tabletop role playing to my writing contemporary lesbian romance. I basically like to make things up. So Foolproof is my third novel with Bold Strokes Books. It takes place in Key West. Martine is a local whose roots go back generations. Elliot is a newcomer stationed with the Coast Guard, but she's been here in Key West before. They were childhood friends, the kind of easy friendship only 8-year-olds have. 30 years later, Elliot is back, and through a series of circumstances, they decide to move in together. Their friendship holds, but something's different this time, an attraction they weren't expecting. So here's the cover, as Sandy said. Do you have any toilet paper? Martine closed the cabinets under her sink and walked into the hallway. Check under my sink, Elliot called from the living room. Elliot's bathroom smelled like her, citrus and salt. Martine bent over to open the doors, but not before she spotted the large blue dildo resting on the counter. Shaped like a traditional dildo on one end, the other side curved and ended in an oval. She'd never seen one quite like it, and she picked it up without thinking. Did you find it? She spun around, still holding the dildo. Oh, Elliot scratched the back of her neck. I forgot about that. Flustered at being caught, Martine said, I haven't looked yet. Because I found this fascinating dildo and couldn't resist touching it. Elliot moved closer, pressing into her from behind. Her belt buckle touched Martine's ass, and she closed her eyes, imagining her picking up that dildo, bending her over the sink. Here. She opened her eyes and a roll of toilet paper sat in front of her. Elliot stared at her in the mirror and gently plucked the sex toy from her nerveless finger. I didn't mean for you to find this. It's okay. Why did her voice sound so weird? She coughed to clear the dryness. Just to be clear, that wasn't from here. I mean, I never used it. Elliot tripped over her words. On someone else. I didn't bring anyone home. That thought hadn't even crossed Martine's mind. She'd been too preoccupied with its use on her, but now that Elliot mentioned it, Martine visualized Bryn on the receiving end. Okay, no. That image cut through her desire-laced brain fog, and she heard the defensive undertone. Ellie didn't have her weirdness about hookups and home, but she'd agreed to her terms. What had Elliot gotten in return? Oh, yeah, about that. This is your house, too. You should bring home who you want. Are you sure? She could still hear Anna Sophia saying, you know that's fucked up, and silently acknowledged her point. I was wrong to ask you. Elliot exhaled, her relief visible. Thanks. That relief brought home how one-sided her request had been. Maybe loosening up a bit wouldn't be so bad. Elliot winked. It's been harder than I thought, carrying around a bag of toys. Martine hoped her face didn't show the blush creeping through her body. She really wanted to know what else was in that bag. I bet. Well, now you don't have to. Somehow, she made a graceful escape from her bathroom and practically snuck out of the house to go get a drink. Elliot woke up as a loud crash came from Martine's bedroom. Jumping out of bed, she burst into the hallway as Martine's door swung open and a shrill voice demanded, Who the fuck is Elliot? A blonde woman stomped down the hallway while straightening her dress and putting on her heels. Apparently, giving Elliot permission to bring people home had opened the way for Martine to do the same. Elliot just hadn't expected it to happen so soon. Shh, baby, come back. Martine followed her, clutching a sheet that did not conceal so much as highlight the fact that she was naked. What are you looking at? The woman shouted at Elliot. Maybe this was why Martine didn't bring dates home. Elliot backed into her room, leaving the door open just a crack. She climbed into bed, grabbed her phone, trying to tune out the conversation, but keeping an ear out if Martine needed help. Finally, the front door closed, and she heard a timid knock. Martine hung by the door with that blue sheet wrapped around her. Elle, are you sleeping? The shortened name and easy familiarity made her warm and cozy inside. No. Are you okay? Groaning, Martine shuffled in and perched on the mattress. I'm fine. I'm sorry if I woke you with that. Well, it wasn't you shouting. She inched over and patted the bed beside her. This is why I don't bring people home. Martine flopped on the bed. The movement pulled the sheet tight against her curves. Elliot balled her hands into a fist to keep from touching those curves. She focused on their conversation instead. Are they always so volatile? Martine laughed and the whole bed shook. No, she was a mistake. I'm usually more selective. I see, even though she didn't. Her lovers often chose her, so she had a hard time imagining deliberately choosing someone who wasn't right for her. Do you have a lot of mistakes? Recently, that's all I seem to have. She didn't understand how. Martine could have anyone she wanted. Why did she keep picking the wrong ones? That's too bad. Tell me about it. She rolled over and propped her head on her elbow. At least you have Bryn. Not anymore. Bryn had stopped answering her texts and Elliot hadn't pursued her. Nothing in their relationship had said permanent anyway. Oh, I just assumed. I mean, that dildo. She smiled. She bought it a few days ago and had been dying to try it out. I know, right? It's brand new. Martine traced along the bedspread with a finger and spoke without looking at her. So you've never used it on anyone? Was that a question or a statement? Where was this conversation going? The undercurrent between them flared to life as that blonde woman's words came back to her. Who the fuck is Elliot? What had happened in that room while they were having sex? Martine? Why was she asking about me? Martine stilled and finally looked at her. I accidentally called your name. She didn't need any more details. She just needed to know. Why? I can't stop thinking about you. Her tone held none of the charged tension between them. She could have been saying almost anything, but the implications remained an intangible ball of want and desire. How long had she been feeling this? Okay, I officially had too much to drink and overshared. Martine slowly stood. Stuck in her own head, Elliot had waited too long to respond. Wait. Martine sat on the edge of the bed with her back to her. I'm not sure. Elliot shifted toward her. Martine held up her hand and pushed off the bed. You know what? Let's just pretend I never said anything, okay? Good night. Elliot threw off the covers to go after her, but didn't get up. Too much was at stake to chase after Martine in the middle of the night. Besides, she'd mentioned drinking. What if she had regrets in the morning? Better to leave it at words spoken while half drunk and totally horny. Didn't everyone have the hots for someone they shouldn't want? Fantasy was one thing, reality another. She let Martine sleep it off and see what the morning brought. And if the morning brought her to her bed while she was sober, well, then she'd have her answer. But one thing was certain. She couldn't stop thinking about Martine either.
Well, that was awesome. And I'm so glad I was muted, just to let the readers in on our little backstage conversation that you and I were having before we started this recording. I had told Leigh that I often write the questions for the Q&A based on the reading. And then you started reading and I'm like, oh, now I understand why you weren't super enthusiastic about that idea.
I was like, oh, I can just imagine some questions I'll get.
BSB must read sex toy edition.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Well, that was a great reading. And I think if that does not pique everyone's interest for this novel, I don't know what will. But I do have some questions that are a little less raunchy than than my previous comment may have implied. So let's start with this book has a lot of tropes, which is really cool. You have a reunion romance, you have friends with benefits, you have roommates. So let's start with what are the pros and cons of writing a reunion romance when you have like so much backstory, and the characters already know each other and all that's already kind of built in. In your process of writing Foolproof, how did you work with that?
So, I kind of avoided the whole sexual tension piece by making them very young.
Mm.
So, and they don't really, some of us have an idea very, very young of who and what we are, and some of us don't. And in my own past, you run into people that like later on you're like, oh my God, you were queer too, and that was kind of the way I thought of it. I was like that intense, and my own child is he's 9, and they have this like intense open friendship at this age where it's just like, I think of the movie Stand By Me was another thing that I thought of. And, who has friends like that? No one anymore, you don't make and so that's what I wanted to do, was to have that kind of tight relationship where you didn't, where they had the feelings between them, but not all of the barriers. So the
Mhm.
emotional barriers. So that was easier to it was different for them to interact with each other because they had built up barriers after knowing each other. And
Yeah,
so it was like somebody who fundamentally knew who you were. So
yeah,
that was what I was trying to go with that
yeah.
one.
Yeah, and I think you have a mix of the old, those emotions, those feelings from the past, but then also the new, um, as well with the sexual tension and whatnot, because now they're adults. So awesome. Okay, so one of your characters, Martine, is a rum distiller, and Elliot is a Coast Guard,
Yep.
which are both incredibly cool professions. What role do their careers play in this novel?
Um, what role?
Like none at all. None.
Well, rum for Martine is an expression. It's like art, and that's really what, you know, and she often struggles for the next level of her. She's one of those people who are technically really good, can just, knocks it out of the ballpark f- on the way on creating it and replicating it, making it, but there's always a little bit of soul missing, and
Mm.
that's because she's kept a piece of herself apart from both the world and the romance and also the rum. So it's when she figures that out that she's like, oh, I've been afraid, but never knew that I was afraid in my own work. So that's how rum plays for Martine.
Hmm, interesting.
And for Elliot, the Coast Guard is really more about like she's used it to just kind of move around. It doesn't it's just who she is. She's always prepared, and just like, she's kind of she likes to rescue and take care of people, but she's not it plays less of a role, but it is just part of who she is.
Yeah, gives her an excuse not to get involved, not to get too
Mhm.
heavy with. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so tell us about friends with benefits, because I think that's kind of one of your core themes in this novel. You have these two people who knew each other as kids, and they meet again, and they end up kind of being roommates, and have a friends with benefits arrangement. Um, I always find it interesting, like the differences between what people say they want and then what they like to read about. And everyone that I talk to says that they like would never want a friends with benefits arrangement in their own lives. They're like, pro love, pro relationship,
Mhm.
can't do casual, but it's super, super popular in novels. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Why do you think it's so popular in books? And do you have any friends who find it popular in their own lives, or is it just me?
Uh, anytime you have sex, there's always unintended consequences. And sometimes it's physical, like pregnancy or whatever you want to call it. But sometimes it's like oh, that was not what I intended. That's why I like friends with benefits, is because it's like you go in and you think, oh, we know each other so well. We're going to be able to communicate all this. And all of a sudden you're in different territory and you're like, ooh, my bad.
Mm.
Like that's why I like it, because it's just like, I like to throw curveballs at the characters. It's like, you think you know what you're doing. You do not know what's coming. So, and that's, yeah. And as far as, yeah, I have a lot of parent friends, so like their fantasies are very different.
It's not going to be happening.
It's not going to be, yeah, friends with benefits is not going to be a thing that they talk about. It's more like, yeah, swapping or something like that. It'd be more like, yeah, vacations and stuff like that. But
That's cool. I think just going back to what you're saying about friends with benefits, I think it's kind of the ideal for that because they do end up together, right? So you get both. You get the like
right,
fun of the, oh, this is going to be casual and we're just going to have a good time. But the reader knows that that's not,
yeah,
going to go on. It's a romance novel. So they are going to end up kind of in a committed relationship. And they kind of get to say, I told you so a little bit.
hmm
So awesome. I love it. Please do check out Foolproof, coming out in October 1st on the Bold Strokes Books web store, and October 11th everywhere books are sold. Thank you so much, Leigh Hays. This has been a delight.
Thank you, Sandy.